I just got back from a 2-day meeting at the United Nations in New York and 2 days at the World Bank in Washington, looking at global social challenges and how we're going to face them. You have, every day, you face the challenge of preparing the next generation for a world that's changing so rapidly that all the knowledge that we've accumulated over the past 100,000 years is not enough for us to prepare the youth for what's going to happen tomorrow or a few years later when they grow up. You know, Homo sapiens been around for more than 100,000 years, no matter how you count it. And yet we started agriculture only about 10,000 years ago. So I have a question for you. Why did it take more than 90, 100, 150,000 years for human beings to figure out how to grow their own crops? What were we doing for 100 millennium before we actually figured out that we could grow our own food and we didn't have to depend on what occurred naturally in the forest? That's how long it takes for us to acquire knowledge. Knowledge that we all get before we even go to school or in the first grade, just by the storybooks, just by watching what's on the TV. Things that we all take for granted today are the result of more than 100,000 years of accumulated knowledge. And today, as you well know as educators, the accumulation of knowledge is getting faster and faster and faster, more and more and more, and we're splitting up the subjects into more and more specialized subcategories because there's so much knowledge nobody can know even about a narrow field. And that tells us two things, tells me two things. One, your profession is the single most important profession on earth. Because it's only because of education that we have come out of the forest, we've come out of the primitive life of the past, and we are moving and developing so rapidly. And yet, the more we learn and the more we develop, the faster things go and the greater the challenge for you as educators. And for a long time, we've been trying to accumulate all the knowledge of the past and pass it on because there wasn't much to pass on. What did we do even in the West before 1500, before there were any printed books? There simply wasn't much around. What did we do before 1994 when there was no internet where we could get everything at our fingertips? Today, there's a plethora of knowledge all around us. So what are we going to teach? Especially when our researchers, when our scientists, when our technologists tell us that everything you're learning today will be out of date in a few years. What a challenge it poses to you to keep up with a rapidly changing world. So I honor you as a profession for trying to do a very challenging, maybe the most challenging, and certainly the most important thing that we human beings do. We try to pass on to the next generation the best, the essence, the wisdom of what we've acquired in the past, even knowing that it's not going to be enough to prepare for the future. On Monday, I was at the World Bank, and a 17-year-old young woman from Mexico, from an Indian origins in not Indian Indian, but Mexican Indian, South American origin, came to address our audience of very distinguished leaders from different countries in different fields. She was part of a movement called Fridays for the Future. How many of you have heard of it? Fridays for the Future? Fridays for the Future was created about 9 months ago by a girl named Greta Thunberg from Sweden. I'm sure some of you must have seen it and heard it, who started organizing school children, she was 15, to leave school and go on strike on every Friday and go down to the parliament in Stockholm and say, We are on strike because the government is not doing what it needs to do to preserve our future. You are mortgaging our future. You are spoiling the earth. You're spoiling our future and the future of our children, and we refuse, we protest, we go on strike. Yesterday was the biggest demonstration in the world of children from around the world. 5,000 demonstrations around the world. Millions and millions of children. In Germany alone, there were more than 1 million. Young children saying, "This is wrong. We refuse to allow you to destroy our future." Where did these children get the knowledge and the inspiration and the courage and the sense of responsibility that they feel they can change the world and change the future? And they're absolutely right, and Jerry said it. It's the youth. It's the youth who have the power. And you're the guardians of that future generation. Are we going to prepare them for a past that doesn't exist? Are we really going to tell them that we know what they should learn and they should just listen to us and memorize and answer standardized tests? What is the standardized answer to global warming? What is the standardized answer to rising inequality? What is the standardized answer to the opiate epidemic that's spreading across my country, America, and all across Europe, where people who have things are consuming more and more drugs because they're depressed? Do we have those answers in the textbook? Are they answered on the standardized test? They're answered in the hearts and minds of people who want to do better, who want to make the world better. The group who met in New York at the United Nations, at the invitation of the United Nations, 50 people who represent 500, who represent hundreds of thousands, say the financial system of the world has to change. It's a perverse system which is increasing the inequalities, the accumulated and waste in a few, when we need something we have enough capacity on earth to benefit everybody, to create enough for everyone. The common good, that was the phrase that Alan used yesterday in the morning. The common good for all. We need an education that's going to promote that common good for all. I'm delighted and privileged to be here. I'm representing the World Academy of Art and Science. It's a 60-year-old organization based in the US, and the World University Consortium, which was set up at the United Nations some 5 years ago, because we know that the educational system in the world today, everywhere, not just here or everywhere, needs to change to keep up with the challenges of the future. And nobody can claim we have all the answers, but we certainly need some inspiration. And that's why I'm privileged to be associated with Mingle, and to hear people coming and talking to us about what they're doing to try to inspire and make this a living process, which is really going to help us for the future. And I know maybe most of you, maybe all of you, have something to share that we can all benefit by to do this better. Because helping children grow and learn and develop character and values and skills and confidence and aspirations, as well as that silly standardized knowledge that we're passing around to them, is the single most important thing we have. The most impressive person I met, apart from the 17-year-old Mexican girl, during that trip, was about a 32-year-old young woman originally from Punjab, has 3 master's degrees. She went to MIT, she worked with top companies in Wall Street, and then she resigned all of that to start her own consulting company in Washington, D.C. And the thing I appreciated most about her, though she has all the economic background, she knows all the technical jargon of the blockchain and Bitcoin and all the latest technologies, the thing I appreciated most about her were her values. Whatever topic came up, she said, but what about the human being? What are we doing that's really going to benefit society? What are we going to do to help spread the wealth and spread the capacity that we have as humanity to everybody? And I said, now that is what education is all about. To give us that essential knowledge and aspiration to be one with others and help them. We heard wonderful examples yesterday of schools that have changed from the teacher teaching the student to students teaching themselves. It's something I learned. I wish that somebody told me a long time ago. I learned the hard way. We learn most when we teach others, in which case we have an educational system which is maximizing the education of the teachers, because we're the ones who we're learning most because we're teaching others and sharing with them. How do you flip the model? I come from Napa, California, where 25 years ago we started a new school to flip that model. We saw one from Denmark yesterday, where the kids are learning in groups, the teachers have become facilitators, the children are teaching each other, and it's been so successful that it's now spread to 200 school districts around the country and even overseas, even to Australia, and it's still spreading. Not that that's the only answer. There are a lot of success stories here. There are a lot of things that have worked well here. And this Inspiration Conference is to try to help us bring those out and exchange them all. And I hope that over time, I hope that when this meeting is over, that we can capture from you some of your success stories, what works for you. Even if it's in one grade, even if it's in one school, even if it's one teacher, something that we can all learn by and spread the wealth of that knowledge, because that's the technology of learning and building character that we need for the future. So we're going to have a very interesting program today. And at the end of the day, I'd like to come back and share with you some of my thoughts on what more we can do here in India. I've been living here most of the time since 1971. We have a school, Primrose School in Pondicherry. But I also wanted to learn and eager to learn from all of you about what's working for you and also what's not working. And how can we collectively together raise the problems, put them on the surface, and address them. There's no simple solution to all of this, but between us, we do have a way. India plus education, not the education that's there in the United States. I don't think the answers are there in the US or in the UK or in Germany or any place. We need an education that comes out of the tradition here, that's based on the values here, that knows the precious human material that we have here. But how do we bring out the best in that material? Not to follow the past and behave as we did in the past, because that won't work in the future, but to create a better future for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.